we've got Nate Baker, Senior Manager of Video Production with the Washington Nationals, Jeremiah Wilson, Digital Content Specialist with the Boston Celtics, and Sam Freed, Senior Videographer and Editor with the Las Vegas Raiders. Hey, I see you there. I love it. All right, we've got a jam-packed session today, and the chat is going crazy, but we're going to get into it with a little bit of discussion on your career backgrounds. So we've got a lot of film students, folks interested in having positions like yourselves at some point when they graduate. So I'd love to dive in and hear a little bit about each of y'all's backgrounds and how you got started in the industry. So Nate, I'll start with you. Did you go to school for what you're doing now? And how did you get your career started in video production?
Yeah, I fell in love with film in high school, and I went to film school in Chicago, went to Columbia College in Chicago, and it was much more narrative, cinematic sort of film education where we were developing scripts and lighting sets. Was not always intending to end up in the sports world, but was always a big fan of sports. Worked for a publisher in their marketing department for a long time in Chicago out of college. And when I moved to DC, I just had the opportunity to connect up with some folks at the Nationals and finally got that kind of Venn diagram of sports and video production to overlap into a nice full circle. So yeah, I'm about to go into my 7th season with the Nationals. I started as a videographer and editor right before the 2019 season, which was very opportune timing as we won the World Series that year. And now I'm the senior manager running a team of full-time and seasonal staff, getting ready to head to spring training in West Palm Beach.
That is amazing. And there's folks from Columbia College in the chat. So
all right.
Lots of shout outs already. And by the way, folks that are watching live, if you've got a question, make sure to put it in the Q&A pod so we see it, not the chat. So again, all questions go to the Q&A pod. That's amazing to hear about your background and where you ended up today. Now, Jeremiah, where did your journey begin, and where have your editing skills kind of taken you career-wise?
Yeah, so my journey was definitely a little unique. I got a degree in marketing from the University of North Florida. So if anybody's from UNF, go Ospreys. And I basically started as a basketball manager my freshman year. COVID hit, and that kind of gave me the ability to work with the team in a less intimate way, but I was still in the arena, and it gave me a chance to still build camaraderie. And I just started out doing edits, taking photos. And as I kept in my journey, I loved videography. I loved the cool effects, but I also love telling stories. And that obviously straight out of college led me to the Celtics. And I mean, it's been a great year ever since. I've been here 3 years now. So it's just amazing. I would have never guessed I'd be where I am today.
That's amazing. Listen, we all take different journeys to get to similar places. So I love hearing about your background in marketing. And we had Brittany in the chat saying, woohoo, go Ospreys. So we've got some folks in the room. Now, Sam, I'd love to hear, what's your background about with video production, and how and where did you get started?
Yeah, so I got started back when I was 14. I was inspired by the MTV series Jackass. That's how I got into video production, because I really liked that show. Started making Jackass videos with all my friends over the summer. And I actually didn't go to college, so I wanted to save that money. Didn't want to have my parents pay all that money. So I basically taught myself and just got out there and learned everything on hand. Also, YouTube is a very huge resource, very helpful. And I was doing freelance for a little bit, and all I did was send a message to the Raiders back in 2017 or 2018 on LinkedIn. I found the senior producer, shot him a message, and he gave me a call 5 minutes later and said, hey, we need someone on staff like right away. And that's all it took. And so I made the move from Oakland down here to Vegas, and here I am.
This is incredible. I love hearing all of the journeys, and that we've got a great collection of pro sports representation. I know I see Pablo saying Bay Area in the chat there. So this is all really exciting. And we're going to dive deeper into a little bit more of your backgrounds a little bit later. But we're here to deep dive into advanced post-production. So Jeremiah and Sam, we will chat with you in a bit. But Nate, I want to dive into your workflows, because the Nationals are super organized from a project organization standpoint.
Yep.
So let's get into the screen share mode, and I'd love for you to share your screen and walk us through, how do you organize all of the assets and all of the media and videos that you're creating when you work with the Nationals?
Yeah, so as I'm sure Sam and Jeremiah can attest to, we have a lot of projects that we have to take care of in any given year. Last year, we were upwards 500-600 projects that we have to do for our organization. And we also have seasonal and full-time people who are coming in and out of the building, coming in and out of the team. And we don't always start or finish the same project. So there was a lot of moving parts when it comes to how we stay organized. And it's really tempting to just keep moving and put stuff wherever it ends up, because it feels like it's faster, but you end up wasting a lot of time in the end because you can't find things. Things get left in your downloads folder and then are offline when someone else tries to access the project, etc. So over the last couple of years, we've just really developed a very meticulous organization structure on our main server, which we call the video volume. And you can see we've got a lot of different stuff that people use on this. We've got old highlights, we've got graphics, we've got information for our game presentation. But the big place that my team works is in this project files folder. And you can see we have it organized by year, but I also organize that folder by department kind of loosely, so we can start the process of digging down and organizing whose projects are for who and where they go. And that allows us also to go back in time. If we have a project we need to update from years before, we can kind of start with the same path. So what's in marketing this year was in marketing 3 years ago. So the language is the same, which is also really helpful when you have people coming and going. And then within our project files, I've already built out a folder template for any new project, which again allows us to stay consistent in gathering assets and managing collateral. We have an After Effects folder, I have assets folders where we can put slates and photos and MOGRTs or LUTs that we may make. I think I have a couple LUTs in here for our FX30 camera. We have audio folders where we organize music, and I even try to break down our exports folder. Kiva and ANC are some game presentation hardware, but our iteration archive and our final and approved folders, again, allow us to track the most recent version of a project and allow for other people on our team to know what the final version is, which, if anyone is an editor, all the editors in this room know that you've named something final V4, final I promise. And that can be really, that adds to the confusion. So when we see something in this final and approved folder, we know that's the safe one to use, whether it goes on scoreboard or goes to the client, etc. So that's kind of how we build things out. And when I get further along, you'll see that I also have an Adobe project, which I use for the projects we'll be sharing later, where the same folder structure exists. There's a footage folder, there's an assets folder, there's an audio folder, which again just allows us to make sure everyone's putting things in the same place all the time and keeps us from losing important information.
That's outstanding. And in the chat, we've got folks saying that template folder idea is great. I'm going to have to steal that. And a lot of jokes about the final _5. Please no more. Caesar saying final.
Yeah, please no more.
We know what you're putting down. Now, one of the trends that we're seeing in the industry is a big shift to working in the cloud. And we know that your team started utilizing Frame.io's camera to cloud to help get footage that you were capturing and then send it to the cloud to be able to share with your social media team to then be able to publish faster. Can you share a little bit about that workflow and what that looks like in your process?
Yeah, absolutely. The problem we were running into was in baseball, there are very hard hit balls that may end up in your photographer's well. So the prospect of dumping a card onto a laptop while the game was going on just didn't feel safe. And we didn't really have the staff or the time to be running cards up and down, the 5 floors to the press box for editing. And so we were trying to find solutions for getting footage to our team faster so that our social media team can post things that are happening in the ballpark without relying only on like broadcast highlights, which they can get on the back end. And so we found camera to cloud and Frame.io, which we have found to be super helpful. I'll just pull up our website here and a folder. But basically, our Atomos Ninja monitor, they are a version of that monitor that is equipped with camera to cloud technology, which allows you to connect that monitor to a Wi-Fi connection and then trigger the monitor to record and send footage over the Wi-Fi from the camera. So it's basically a monitor for us, but then also every time I hit record on my camera, the monitor records that same file and sends it over the Wi-Fi signal up to the cloud into this web interface. Every day I reconfigure and tell that monitor where to send the footage, and then I send that link to our social media team and anyone else who might be interested, so they can open up this interface that you see and download clips that they might find helpful. This also works really great for like our communications and PR people. If they're doing like a meet and greet, or there's like an autograph signing, we can shoot footage of that. They can pull that footage directly. In this instance that I have here, we had a prospect make their debut back in August, and you can kind of see through here, we were just shooting. This is live action. All of these shots come from the well. You can even see some pre-game footage here that we sent up. But we were trying to capture this player's first big league hit, and our social media team wanted to share that as soon as possible. And luckily, later in the game, he got that hit, and we were able to capture it from the well. There's also some options here, so I can obviously download this file, but I can also download proxies, which is really great. So if I'm on that social team, or if I'm on our comms team and I wanted to have this file, there's a way for me to download it through this interface. You can also download it in the viewer here. So there's like a lot of different things you can do in this space. And one of the tricks that we've kind of come up with is shooting this sort of black frame. So we tell our social media team, we tell our folks, if there's a black frame after a clip, then the clip before it is something we would maybe suggest using or was captured, and which is quality. So this is just literally my hand in front of the lens, hitting record and stopping record really quickly, and then moving on to shooting the game. I had mentioned sort of the pre-game stuff, but we were really excited. We had some women from the Olympic team come to the ballpark and throw out the first pitch. So this is also a link that we can share to like their social people, like if they have someone handling their social media, so that if they wanted to use clips that we're using, all they need is this URL, and they don't need an account. They don't need to hold a seat in Frame.io. They're just able to look at this publicly and download that footage.
That's awesome. We've got a few questions, and I would love for you to show again how you would download a clip, like what the social team is working. Because I know you mentioned being able to download some smaller files, which is great, right? Because in the social workflow that we're talking about, it's more about speed, not necessarily quality. Can you show that again?
So this feed here. I'll go back to the baseball highlights here. This feed is updating in real time. So you don't have to refresh this. If you're watching this interface on our social media team in the press box, clips are just appearing as we're shooting. Luckily, we've been able to set kind of a private Wi-Fi network in the ballpark, so our cameras and stuff are connected to a pretty speedy internet that isn't being hogged by the fans or by the point of sale systems or whatever.
Right.
But if they see a clip that they want to download, maybe they see this black clip, oh, this player got a hit here, they can scrub through, which is really great. And then there's just like the three buttons, and you can share it for review. Like you can send it to someone else on the team. There's some status stuff for if we were reviewing an edit, which we're going to get to shortly. But then I can also download it. I can download it as an MP4, and I can download a smaller file too if I'm looking to just use proxies until I get the footage from the camera. So it's really simple. You just monitor the link that I send, and the team just downloads whatever they might want to use. Like this pregame footage, the same thing. This player is making their debut. If they wanted to share that, it's just a really easy 2 clicks, download and click, and you're good to go.
That's amazing. And you know, in your role as manager of video production, you're wearing a lot of hats, right? So you're filming, then you're also editing some of that content. When this content that we're looking at, when you need to work with it and start building and edit, what does that process look like for you?
Yeah, so typically we use Frame.io for that immediacy. So it's typically a single shot with our social media team who's probably posting a raw file with, text. If we were to come back and cut something from the game, we would still use Frame.io for the review process, which I can get into shortly. But we also capture on the card. So we dump our cards at the end of the day. We put that on our video volume, which I showed you earlier, and then we can make an edit. If we were, it's my understanding that new versions of Frame.io are going to do a significantly more in project management. So you can be sharing files and using Frame.io as sort of an online place to store footage and project files, etc. But right now we're just using it sort of as a real-time delivery system for our social media team. And then we go back and use the footage from our card because maybe it's 4K or maybe it's, in 120 frames a second. Allows us to be a little more flexible with that footage.
I love that. Can we dive into Premiere Pro and see what the Frame.io panel looks like? I know you said your team kind of leans on that. And with Frame.io, you can collaborate through commenting and sharing and all of that stuff. But can we dive a little deeper on that?
Absolutely. So outside of just sharing raw clips with our social team, we can actually use Frame.io integrated into Premiere. So you should be seeing that now.
Yep.
I've got kind of my master project here. I'm going to open up the sequence. We did a sizzle reel for a player who was up for winning an end of season award. So yeah, it was just kind of a hype reel that we made for him. I'm going to open the one by one as well. And what's really great about Frame.io is that it integrates completely with, I'm actually go full screen with this so that I can maximize, but there's a window panel called Review with Frame.io. It might be named something different in other iterations, but as long as I'm logged in, I can connect to the website, and my end in Premiere, I can see this viewer. But if I go to the, if I go to this project on Frame.io, it looks very similar. And this is an interface that I would send to our marketing department, who can watch my edit and make comments in line. I don't know if you can notice, but there's a time code with all these comments, and it matches these kind of buttons here. So if I were watching this and I see this here, maybe someone commented and noticed this, his wrist kind of rolls under his arm and it looks a little painful. You can kind of see how his arm rolled under. I don't know if I necessarily want to show that in the edit. So I've made a little comment here, hey, can we cut this beforehand? And if I go back into my Premiere window, where did that go? Here we go. I open this frame, I can see that comment here. And if I sync using this kind of sync button, I can click on that comment and it'll snap my playhead in my sequence to where that comment was made, which allows me to be a lot faster. I don't have to remember and write down time codes. I don't have to have some master list in emails everywhere else. And I can also then say, if I view my comments here, if I make that edit in my sequence here, I'm actually just gonna, I think I've already kind of done it here, but you can, so I made the change and now I can mark that as complete. And if I go back into my Frame.io, now it's marked with a quick refresh. That comment is marked complete. So you can actually follow in real time as people are making changes. And there's some other really cool stuff that you can do in Frame with reviewing and making notes that I think someone else is going to share on a little later. But it's become a really helpful tool for us as we're doing sort of inline work. That connectivity and that time code makes it a lot easier for us to keep track of edits and iterations, and keeps us moving quickly for this quick turn stuff.
That is so awesome. I love the connectivity and being able to talk between. And I've used the Frame.io panel to mark my comments as completed because it is so nice just to check things off the to-do list. It feels good psychologically. So I love, how you showed the kind of before and after. That is amazing there. I know you mentioned, right, making some edits, and I love the example, right, with the wrist and cleaning that up, making sure that the content that is going to multiple platforms is good and represents the brand well, represents the team well. Are you using any features in Premiere Pro that help you resize for different formats or retime your edits for maybe you want to make a minute version or a 30-second version? Any features that you're using?
Absolutely. There's two really easy and really really powerful tools that we're using. One of them is auto reframe, and one of them is the auto remix tool. So I'm going to go back into another project here. I've got this reframe and remix project. I've got a couple sequences here. I'm going to open the 4x5 of this project. This was a player that we signed back in the off season, but he played with us a couple years ago. So we had some highlight footage. And I'm just going to delete this out of here so I can do it in real time. But I've made this edit of footage, and I've already picked my song. I'm actually going to go into my audio folder here. And you can see this is an example of that template that I mentioned earlier. Every project we make has these folders in it. So now I know if someone else worked on this, they know where the audio is. I've got my music in here. I've got my track here. And I even actually have it selected my in and out points. And I'm pretty sure my in point matches this little edit here. What did I hit here? Oh, there's no music. That's why. So when that kind of comes on, I want the beat to drop, and I've got that timed up here. So I'm going to drag this down here. Use kind of our auto match here, and you can see now I've got my music, which is really cool. And I want to keep that beat going. But if I drag this out just by itself, you get to this part in the end where the music sort of drops out. And it's dramatic, but it's not the energy that I'm looking for. And so kind of my old school brain would go in, use my blade tool, try to find the beat, chop it, option click and duplicate and snap it all back together. Instead, I can just tell Premiere, this is where I want to end. I bring it back here. And then in our ripple tool section, there's this remix tool. So it's really easy to find. And you get this little music note icon cursor. And if you just click on the end of your audio clip and drag that out to the end of my sequence, Premiere analyzes that and in just a couple seconds remixes that. And now I have that high energy part of the song all the way out through my edit. It saves me a ton of time because I don't have to then do a bunch of back and forth and trying to match that timing on my own.
That's amazing. We've got Aaron in the chat that said remix tool for the win. Other people say, David said, that's so fire. And like you said, being able to retime quickly also can help you if you're trying to edit for multiple different formats. What's the Nationals' take on all the different platforms that exist for social, and how do you use Premiere Pro to kind of help with those workflows?
Yeah, so another thing that I build into all of our templates are blank sequences in different aspect ratios, because we're doing 4:5s for Instagram most likely. We're doing 1:1s for X. We're doing 9:16 for Reels or for YouTube Shorts or for TikTok. And sometimes our social team thinks they want a piece of content for one platform. And then after a meeting of the minds, they decide, oh, we think we should post this somewhere else with a different ratio, which can be pretty annoying. I'm actually going to open my 9:16 here. I'm just going to do what I think all of us would do. I think we'd start the 9:16. We'd go into our 4:5, select everything, copy it, we'd paste it. But now you can see I've got all these black bars, right? So now I have to do this manual work of going through and resizing and keyframing action because the screen is a lot more narrow. And that becomes a real time consuming process when they probably decided later than they thought that they wanted this new ratio. So I'm on the clock here now. So instead of doing that, I'm actually going to undo and delete that back out. I'm going to get rid of the sequence. In Premiere, in the sequence tab here, there is an auto reframe sequence option. And this is where that kind of assistive AI stuff that I know Adobe is doing a lot with comes in really handy. If I click there, it's going to create a new sequence for me. So instead of having to duplicate, instead of having to copy and paste, I'm just going to rename this now so that I don't get confused, so that it's a 9:16 label instead of a 4:5. It's vertical, so you can also pick which ratio you want. So if you were going to 1:1 from a 4:5, etc. And then there's a couple other options for tracking, which works with the keyframes and nesting. But really simply, if I click create, Adobe now has done that work for me. It's auto-sized everything. Everything is fitting the screen. And then if I play it back, there are going to be some places like on a baseball field, there's a lot of faces, which I know the AI is searching for. There's a lot of stuff happening. So sometimes stuff like this doesn't line up perfectly, but I'm just going to scrub it back and show you now how a lot of it does. It kind of centers and finds that face. So it followed him out of the batter's box, which was really great. But in that very next clip, this shot is actually a shot of him high-fiving his teammates, but the AI has found the umpire instead, which kind of makes sense. It's looking for a person to center. But there's a lot of really quick adjustments we can make, and I've saved 80% of the work in this reframing. So if I go back into my effects controls, there's now this auto reframe addition. So instead of going into motion, where I think most people would go to to scale and to move things around, you now have this auto reframe, and you can make adjustments to the offset here, or you can even overwrite and redo your keyframes. But if I just use this offset tool, I can drag it back and say, oh, now there's the player celebrating, and now it's corrected. So I've saved a ton of work by doing this auto reframe, and it really helps with the social edits because there's just a lot of different ratios, and we shoot such a wide angle of baseball that having that AI work for us is really helpful.
That's amazing, and such great time savers. And then obviously we're seeing your work in progress, right? So then you can, add some audio sweetening. Then maybe you can, the next phase, so to speak, in the editing process is maybe applying some color correction and color grading. Do you have any color tips and tricks that you lean on a day-to-day basis?
Absolutely do. In fact, I love when our team has the time to do color correction. We do our best. I think maybe a shout out to my Columbia College folks, but I learned there to get it right in the camera. So we work really hard to have good white balance and good exposure, so we don't have to do as much work in post. But just in case something comes up and we do need to do some color correction, I'm going to close and open my color correction sequence here. And I've got 3 things I want to show you, combining all of these tools into one kind of really cool shot that I have. So the first thing that that Premiere does really well is color match. So if you notice, this is an interview I shot with a player about his pitching, and I have these 2 camera angles. I've got my FS5 that I use, but I also have this FX3 that I use as a second angle, and you can kind of see it doesn't really match. And I could go through and kind of fine tune and try to find, is this the highlights? Is this the midtones? Is this the shadows that don't match? Is this, a contrast issue? Is this a saturation issue? And I hope most of us are familiar with this Lumetri panel, but if we're not, there's a lot of these different ways you can do that color correction. You can use your curves, which, is kind of a 201 class color correction. You've got this basic correction, which I'm sure a lot of us use to do a quick adjustment here. But one thing that's super helpful with files like this is the color match option that Adobe has. So if I go into my comparison view in my Lumetri color panel, it's going to pull up and put these 2 things side by side. And then the first one is going to be my reference. So I can kind of scrub where on the shot I want to be my reference. And then my playhead and the clip I have selected is what it's going to change. And you can tell really quickly with this face detection on, if I apply a match, you get a really quick 95% of the way there adjustment. And if these were further apart, it would be doing even more work to get these closer together. And now I can say, oh, you know what? It really is just this white background that isn't quite matching. It's a little cooler. So I'm just going to warm it up a little bit. And now we have a pretty good match that I can edit from. And it's just such a time saver and a brain saver when you're trying, because I've gone crazy before trying to find the right combination of saturation and contrast and RGB, that by the time you're done with it, it doesn't even match anyway because you got so far away from the original shot. So that's something that we use a lot when we're doing multicam interviews like this, when you just can't help but have a slightly different look and feel within the camera. Whether your picture profiles are different, your white balance is a little different, your lens might be a little different. So that accounts for that inconsistency and makes some really quick changes for us there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and another thing we use a lot is this eyedropper tool. So I'm gonna open up this sequence. So this is like a post-game celebration, pretty typical Gatorade bath after a walk-off hit. And I really like this shot, but it feels a little flat to me. Sometimes when you're exposing for particular things, other things don't really pop. Another thing that happens a lot at the ballpark is there might be a lot of wear and tear on the field. So maybe the grass gets a little more dull. And in the same Lumetri color panel, there's something I use quite a bit, especially at the park here, when we want green grass, when we want, sorry, I just want to find it here. Yeah, here we go. we want green grass, we want bright skies, we want to look really inviting for our fans to be here. You can actually use these verse tabs with the eyedrop tool to make some of those changes without affecting your entire shot. So for instance, let's just say I want this grass to pop a little bit more. I want it to be a deeper green. I grab my eyedropper tool, I click on that green grass, and now you can see I've got these 3 handles here. And if I drag up towards the greener, you can see that green grass get greener without really impacting the rest of my shot. Luckily, our host there was in a blue shirt, not a green shirt. So now we've got some greener grass, which makes it a little more inviting. And now I'm looking at the sky, and it's a little flat. It's not really popping how I want it to. But I can't change that sky without really adjusting the rest of my shot. But if I go into my hue versus hue here, and I click on that blue, I can maybe drag down and find a blue that's like a little more inviting. You can also do, if I undo that, you can do multiple points on the same line in a different verse. So if I wanted to do another hue verse sat on the sky, I can just create 3 more points here, and I can increase the sat on that blue sky, which now I'm getting somewhere. Now I've got something that looks alive, that looks bright and fresh. And I would maybe recommend not using this lightly, but I also feel like if you don't like this flavor of Gatorade, I can click this orange here, and I can do lemon lime Gatorade, or I can do purple Gatorade if we want.
I love that. Listen, it's all about creativity, and maybe you're working on a branded campaign for some reason, or maybe you want to bring out some different elements. Those color tips are amazing. Live audience, let us know. Nate has showed us so many different features. I want to hear your favorites that you like. So drop your favorite features that he's chatted about in the chat. And again, keep those questions coming in the Q&A. Nate, I want to pause for one quick question that we got regarding reframe. So someone's asking, when shooting in 1080, how do you go about filling a 9:16 aspect ratio? Do you just sometimes scale up the footage and lose quality, or do you use a different aspect ratio when editing? We know you showed us auto reframe, but what's your take there?
Yeah, so when you have to shoot in 1080, it gets a little more challenging, right? Because you're probably using some rule of thirds here when you're shooting something, or maybe there's multiple subjects. We do a lot of footage where we do like walk and talk stuff. So there's like 2 people. And if they want that on a 9:16, that could be really challenging. What I would recommend is probably there's a couple options depending on the monitor. If you're able to use a monitor like an Atomos Ninja monitor, they have some overlays built in their menus that will give you sort of a transparent overlay. And that'll give you the 9:16 or the 1:1, which is really great. And that can kind of cue you into how you need to frame your shot if it's going to exist in 9:16 somewhere else. I've also found that like for instance, our highlight footage is all 1080. If I have to scale it up by 30 or 40% and it's going on an Instagram reel, I'm not really too mad about it because it's part of a larger edit where people are just enjoying the atmosphere. I think you get away with a lot more in that format. And not only that, but with the medium is the message. Like I think people just expect it to be a little less perfect on Instagram reels. So you can get away with a little more. I'd probably be okay with that most of the time. It's just scaling up some footage if I have to. And there's other ways to do it too. Like in this shot here, if I take all of this and I go a 9:16, I might, I can even show you here, like this hit here, he even cuts his face off a little bit already. So if I scale this up, sorry, I have the wrong clip selected. If I scale this up a little bit, I have to do some keyframe work. I have to slide it over. I'm almost doubling the size of this. But like in the long run, if I play this through, I don't think you're really going to notice most of the time. So I'm not as worried, especially for social edits where the 9:16 typically lives.
Awesome. And one other question quickly we'll answer, but Nate, does your team use a shared server? We saw some of your project organization, but they're asking, is all that on location, or can you access it through a personal device? Because for this person, file sharing is a big bottleneck. So they're looking for solutions. So quick answer.
So we are on an internal server in the ballpark. And then we also can work over a VPN on Wi-Fi for like at spring training or on the road. It just rarely is speedy enough to access the server. So when we're not allowed to have server access, we're doing a lot of hard drive stuff and then bringing it back and putting on the server afterwards. But we shoot so much. I mean, I could go into our footage bins here and our video shoots from last year, and you can see there are 444 items in our video shoots folder from 2024. So there's really nowhere to keep all of this 4K, 120 footage other than on an internal server that we just have to access here at the park. It does hinder our work from home policy a little bit, but now that it's getting warmer here, we're not so mad about coming to the ballpark.
I love that. That's awesome. And the MLB is growing. Like Major League Baseball is growing. I feel like I see a lot more content in Asia and different global audiences. What's your team's take on working with content for maybe working with a different language? Are you using any new features or anything like that to help with telling that story?
We are. We've recently made it a kind of an organization initiative to try to reach out to our Spanish-speaking audience a lot more. Obviously, baseball is a place with a lot of Latin players, a really deep, rich history of Latin players going back a very long time. So one thing we do a lot of is captioning into Spanish. And we've also added a Spanish radio broadcast as of last year. So we have people who can tune in. We've actually heard that like our players' families listen online to the Spanish broadcast, which is really great.
That's special.
But it does come, it becomes a little burdensome to do captioning and to do subtitles and to try to figure out, all the different ways we can caption content. But it's been really exciting, and talking to you all and experimenting a little bit is been working in the beta version of Premiere Pro, which has a really cool new feature. I'm going to full screen this one, but basically, I'll give you a little overview of this project. This is what we call a booth cam, where we have up in that top right corner here, we have a GoPro in our radio booth, and this is our English radio broadcaster. We put a GoPro there, and when there's a big game, we kind of nest him in sort of picture in picture, and we release that on social media. And I'll just play a little bit of it so you can kind of see how it works. But you'll hear his broadcast and see him, and also see the highlight at the same time. It kind of gives the fans a kind of a behind-the-scenes experience.
And the first pitch, Garcia swings, launches one, deep center field. Way back goes the center fielder Varsho at the wall. He leaps, and it's gone! It's gone!
So that's a really fun way for our fans to kind of combine someone's voice they only hear with a highlight. And we probably would caption that. So I've already gone through the work of creating a transcript. And from a transcript here in my text panel, you can create captions. I've already done that here. So those are toggled on, which is really cool. A lot of proper nouns in baseball. I'm pretty sure this guy's name is not Marshall. It says Field of Marshall there. That's not his name. I think his name is Varsh. I don't even remember what his name is. So I've gone through and I've cleaned up a version here where you can see that I've got it all cleaned up here.
Yeah, always good to double check proper names for sure.
Yeah, I think Luis Garcia and Luis Garcia were both in the original transcript. But again, we've saved a ton of time. I'm not having to make a basic title, lay it down, type it all in, copy and paste it, type it all in. Another really thing that I think is really fun is you can actually, if you make changes to the style of your captions, you can actually save that as a track style within the project or on your server. So I've just kind of gone ahead and made some tweaks for our 2025 branding. So now I have captions in our brand look and feel, and I can just toggle that on and off. So I can even see on the old one, I've saved this track style in my project. If I just click that, now it turns all the captions. I don't have to copy paste. I don't have to do anything. So it's a real time saver. But back to our Spanish language, this is a Spanish speaking player. And so maybe we want to share his performance with our Spanish speaking audience. If I go into, I've made this kind of Spanish booth cam. I've got my English subtitles here on my English language, and the power of this beta version is I'm back in my text panel, and I've got my captions open. If I click these 3 dots, there is an option now to translate my captions. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna pick English as my source language. I'm gonna pick Spanish as my new caption language. I'm also gonna toggle this caret for advanced preferences. I'm gonna turn on my track style that I saved, our 2025 blue and white. And then I'm also gonna tell it to put it on single lines. That's just a preference of mine. But there's a lot of kind of customization you can do here. And with a click of a button, Premiere analyzes those captions in English and will very quickly spit out a Spanish version of those captions. And I'm probably still gonna get this reviewed by a Spanish speaker on staff, but it has saved me a ton of time in Google Translate to just automatically translate those and get those 85, 90% of the way there, and just get some tweaks from someone who is more native in the language.
That is amazing. And for those who are looking to translate your captions, this is live in Premiere Pro beta today, so you can check it out and play with it. Nate, you have covered so much great content, your project organization, camera to cloud, Frame.io, remix, auto reframe, color tips and tricks, and the audience is loving them. Thank you for sharing that captions translation feature as well. That's exciting to see the ways that we can make our content go further around the globe. So Nate, this has been awesome. We're going to bring you back on for Q&A. So again, folks in the chat, drop your questions for Nate in the Q&A pod. Nate, we'll see you back in a little bit. But we're going to bring on Jeremiah. So Jeremiah Wilson from the Boston Celtics. You can unmute. Hey, good to see you, Jeremiah.
Hello. Wow. I mean,
are incredible.
Thank you. I mean, just a round of applause for Nate, because he just killed it. He's showing me things that I haven't even put into my workflow. So hopefully everybody's seeing this, and he did an incredible job. I'm just happy to be here. So
listen, we're all here to learn together, and I love that you called that out, because I learn something every single day. That's the beauty of being a creative. Now let's have you screen share. I know you have some projects to share with us.
yes.
Share a little bit about the project you'd like to share, and I'd love to hear your general approach to when you start editing a video.
Yeah, so I mean, the first piece I'm going to share is a Jason Tatum highlight piece. This is obviously in basketball. We play 82 games. We cover media every single game. There's multiple interviews. And this one is a culmination of the past week we've been having. So a lot of ups and downs, a lot of good presser sound bites that we want to use, and couple that with some footage to make it, really sentimental. There can be 4 or 5 interviews that we have to look through over the course of however many games, just to determine kind of what we want to use. So obviously everybody can see my screen here, but I'm going to actually go to my import. And this is the folder, my presser folder for this exact project. You'll see that there's literally 5 different interviews in here. So let's just say I want to take one interview per se. And the reason we want these interviews is because, like you said, they tell a story. So transcriptions really are basically imperative to our workflow, because nobody wants to sit here and watch an 8-minute video or have to listen through every single soundbite. You may miss something. You may just fall asleep at your computer. It's 2 a.m. Like, you have no idea. So what I want to do here is show you guys this auto transcribe tool. And this is the tool I use the most out of probably anything in Premiere, because it saves me so much time. And the cool thing about this is that we have a ton of different channels that your content can go onto. So even with the languages part, like if we need to do it for Los Celtics who's Spanish speaking, or if we're out of town and we want to do, German, French, whatever, there's so many different ways to transcribe audio, and it saves you so much time. So I'm going to actually keep it to English, hit that auto transcribe, and I'm going to import this presser here. So you'll see it'll open up this sequence right here. And if you click on the text panel and then you hit transcribe, you'll see that Joe Mazzulla's entire presser is now transcribed for me. So
that's a huge time saver for sure, because this is like what pressers take a couple minutes.
It literally did it in all of like 30 seconds. So the key thing that I do is that I won't actually play it out. I'll just kind of skim through. Like, I'll just kind of see what pokes my eye. So here he says good teamwork. And if I literally just highlight good, it'll send me to the exact place in the video on my timeline where he said it. And this is perfect because nobody wants to have to sort through. You just want to go right to what you need. So let's just say I highlight this entire sentence, and now you'll see, I'll expand it now, but there's an in and out. And the in and out is the exact words that I highlighted because that's all I want. So how I do it is I'll Command C and I'll Command V, and it should pop up. I may have done that wrong.
Oh, you might have to yeah, there you go.
There we go. There we go. Sorry.
All good.
But there you go. So now you'll see that the exact snippet that I wanted is cut out, and there's no need to, I used to use a slice tool and have to go through and delete all that stuff you don't want. So it saves you a ton of time when you're trying to find the exact sound bites that you want.
Can you add another clip? I would love to see that again.
Yeah,
like if you wanted to search for a specific word and kind of build your timeline. Do you ever use the search panel?
Well, I do sometimes. Obviously everybody has social media. So I'll be on my phone on Instagram and I'll say, oh, like, I didn't even know he said this during his presser, but I want that exact moment. So now it's like, oh, if I want to type the word team and search for the word team because he said something about the team, or here, good teammate. So say I saw on social media, oh, Joe said teammate, but I don't want to scrub through 6 minutes of his presser. I just want to find the specific part where he said teammate. So I'll highlight that here. Same thing. It'll take me to the exact point. I'll be able to highlight it. And then it'll give me an in and out. I can drag it obviously to a different sequence, but I'll leave it in this one for now. Command V, and there it is. So now I have the 2 sound bites that I needed.
So for the piece that you showed us, you kind of did that process and you kind of laid out your timeline for that. Can we take a peek behind that? Because
Sure.
We've got folks in the chat that are excited about the storytelling component. So I'd love to just like see, once you're starting to choose those sound bites, how do you then craft it all together to tell and weave that story?
Yeah, so as you can see, this came from 2 different pressers, but this is all the sound bites from Tatum. So this is a nested clip. And what I can do with that clip now is I can arrange these sound bites and they don't have to be all in order. I can pick and choose when he says what or what sentence goes where. So it gives me just the freedom to mix and match and kind of move things around depending on, the flow of the piece. So once I have that nested clip, I'll drag it into my final timeline. And then this is where you start to build. So as you see this A2 right here, this track is specifically the nested clip of all of his pressers. So I don't have to worry about 40 different audio tracks kind of messing with me. I'm not moving them over. I'm not, cutting them short by accident when I'm stacking footage on top. It's all nested, it's all together.
By this point, you're locked in your best sound bites and you want to keep it all together and nest them all as one clip.
Absolutely.
Essentially.
And now, as you see, it's not just about the audio, but it's about the visual and how do you accompany that audio with the visual. And we do that through captions. I have been on this trend for a while, but I love text on the screen. It's so more immersive. It just makes watching it, you feel it a little bit more. So I was able to generate these captions through that audio timeline. And now within the piece, it's just reworking it. So as you go through the captions literally completely align with everything that Tatum is saying in his presser. So
yeah, that's a great way. I love the way you kind of frame that. It's almost like you're building the best sound bites using transcription. Then you've got your edit that you're choosing from there, and you're almost using that not only as an audio piece, but also a visual tool for the social edit. That is amazing. I love that. And we've got folks, Gina saying, love the transcription. Deborah K saying, this is a great idea. This is awesome. Now, we talked about the graphics and visuals and how you like to lean on text.
Yeah.
But does your team have any ways to kind of streamline your workflows in working with graphics? And I'm thinking things like lower thirds or bugs to make your process a little more streamlined?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing for us, and we've honed this in as I pull up this next timeline, is that uniformity is what helps your brand stand out. Like at the end of the day, if you're all your videos, whether that's color grading like Nate was talking about, or it's lower thirds and it's text and it's text size and it's okay, well, it's not nothing's always italics, maybe it's bold. Just continuing video through video, it gets tough to have that consistency. So we use lower thirds and we use the Mogerts, which are literally embedded into Premiere. So I believe Mogert, correct me if I'm wrong, motion graphic something template. Maybe?
You got it. Yeah. Motion graphic templates. Mogert rhymes with yogurt. To me, I always think of yogurt when I say Mogert.
Guys, I was prepared for this. That was the $1 million question. I got it right. So if you look at my timeline here, just focus on the video for right now. So this piece is sponsored asset with Gatorade. We call it the grind. And it's basically you're highlighting one player and you want to not only talk about what he does on the court, but what he does off the court that helps him on the court. So we had 3 different interviews. The first one is Isaiah Covington, who is our performance coach. And you can see that lower third at the bottom left. So keep an eye on that. Our second interview is Craig. He's director of player development, but he's also one of the assistant coaches that works super closely with Peyton. And the third, again, same lower third, but we have Chase, who's a friend, photographer. He's around. He's great. But the key with all of this is that this Mogert right here, if you go to your graphics template, and I'll unfilter this. So obviously within the graphics template panel, there's a ton of different things you can import, but we have a specific way to star or favorite the ones that we use all the time. So I hit that star, hit that filter, and literally this is a template that's been built out by someone in After Effects that you can now import into Premiere, and it's the same lower third. It's consistent. You can literally do anything to it, and it'll be uniform throughout all of our projects.
Can we see a change? Let's drop it somewhere
Let's
in
do
the.
it. Let's do it. Let's see. So it'll obviously there's a whole wipe, and it's very nice the way it comes up. But let's just say we don't want it to be Jason Tatum, right? So we'll head to our properties panel. As you can see, we even have the ability to click the numbers on and off. But let's just say we're gonna do number 33, right? Number 33, whoever that person may be, is now. Let's say it's me. I'm in it now. I'm the player. I'm number 33.
You are the newest member of the Boston Celtics. I love this.
I would never be number 33, but let's just say, for example, so without having to resize the text, without having to align it again, without having to do multiple exports like I had to do with After Effects, it gives you the ability to just change out the names and just continue on with your edit. Nothing more than that. Your graphics, your lower thirds, they're beautiful, and nothing's wrong. So
this is amazing. And I remember when motion graphics templates first came out, and I was so excited for the exact same reason that you just showed us, right? Before, it was so time consuming to make a change to a graphic, and then I might have to render it out somewhere. But now, using the motion graphic template that was built in After Effects, you just have to change the text. And for those who haven't used it, you can create and build it in so many ways, right? Like you showed Jeremiah with the option to toggle on or off a number. You can change the title. We can make Jeremiah the newest member on the team. That is so cool. I love that intel. Now, you mentioned you building lots of different content for all these different places. How do you manage the review and approval process? Because I know as a creative, it can be challenging to show your work to other people because it's so important. And, you know, in the story that you're building, you're like wanting to craft a piece of art. Like, what's the review and approval process for your team?
Listen, I'll just put it out there as a selfish creative. It hurts my heart when anybody critiques. We treat it as our babies, and this is our work, and we take so much pride in it. So obviously, the criticism and the comments that come back from some of the videos that you make, they're all critiques. They're all, you know, somebody has to do it, their job.
It's part of the process to make it work. Yeah.
And it's how you work as a team. So we use Frame.io, which is, hopefully you guys can see that on the screen right now.
Yep, we see it.
So you'll see on the left side, and I think somebody asked this in the chat earlier, but it's like, how do you, I guess, folder and like, how do you basically make sure everything is where it's supposed to be? So we have a ton of different folders that divide different projects. So as you can see, I'm in this folder now, which is the grind, but the grind has been here since 2021. So even though I may have not started working here till 2023, I still have the ability to go back and click on and watch and look at some of those comments and critiques from the past episodes so I don't make the same mistakes, or just to help me understand what I'm working on and how the feel of it, the tone, you know, all those things go into projects and all those things matter. And it continues to talk about uniformity. That's just it. Everybody going towards the same goal. So I actually click on this Peyton Pritchard edit here. And then the top left, you'll see this is V4. So all my content creators, you guys know what that means. Version 4, please no more. Okay. So this is version 1. As you can see, right-hand side, you know, there's some comments in there. The great thing about Frame is that you have this ability to, it's timestamped for you. So basically you can click on that exact comment and it'll take you exactly where you need to go. And you don't have to waste time with, what was that time he said? Was it 32? It's like, it's all right there. It's very intuitive. Nate showed how you can do it in Premiere, and I thought that blew my mind. So it helps the review process go a lot faster. And it's a really, really good tool.
That's awesome. And I want to see, are you able to compare the versions at all? Like if you wanted to reference back, because sometimes I've had this happen to me before. You're on V10, please no more. But then the client comes back or your manager comes back and said, actually, we really liked V2. So I see you've got us in comparison mode here.
It's a gut punch whenever you have to go back, but with Frame, you can do it. So we'll go version 1 and we can do version 3 if we want to do a side by side. And this literally timestamps it again. It's like, oh, actually the clip you put in there, take that out and put the other one you had already. And it's like, oh, well, I can already scrub through my timeline, go to a minute and something and know exactly the clip that I added to. And sometimes for me, I'll just, after a project is done, I'll watch version 1 and I'll watch version 4 and I'll think to myself like, okay, I understand why the critiques were what they were. Or like, right. Now that I can see the end goal and I saw the beginning, it makes a lot more sense. So, you know, just always keeping all of your versions and being able to watch them and see them through, I think is a really good tool, especially for creatives that work on so many different projects. It's good. It just shows progress. Absolutely. There is one more cool feature that I will show.
What's that?
And this is, again, something I learned when I got out of college, but the way you present your videos makes an impact on whoever's watching. So what we have is the share presentation, I guess, ability. And this is when we're sending out version 4 to corporate partnerships, to the head of Gatorade or somebody at Gatorade, representatives. You want these people to see your work in just the most beautiful way possible. So imagine getting your email and it looks like this instead of a Dropbox link or instead of other things that don't really do it justice. So with us, we have obviously our logos on here, the name of the project. You can watch it within the window itself. You don't have to open up a new link. We can allow downloads. We can take them off. You can also obviously mix and match colors if we wanted to do our secondary color instead of the primary. And for me, I think it just makes it so much more beautiful when you're giving someone a project or you're asking somebody to watch it and it's just presented in, you know, a nicer way. So
that is amazing. And I think, you know, we got a question in the chat saying what sites might be good for portfolios, you know, when to applying to jobs. This is a great example of that, right? To have some custom branding, be able to share a demo reel. One quick question for you we've got from Charlotte. How long do you typically spend on a single edit? I know that might vary per project, but
man, yeah, I guess it really does depend, but it also depends on when it's due. So
Right.
You, there's times where there's, obviously bigger commercials that I've worked on or bigger edits that I've been given months in advance to get my music, to know kind of what shots I want. But there's times where I'm on the road and, hey, Jeremiah, you have 24 hours to turn this road trip recap in because we have to give it to social tomorrow because we play again. So with basketball, you could play 4 games in a week. So the turnaround time, you have to be efficient. And that's why the transcription tool, that's why Frame and kind of the ways in which you can keep your creative process very concise, I would say. It'll speed up a ton. And I think, and this is for a lot of people in college, when I started out, I wanted to put every single edit into every single video and run it over and again and again and again. But simplicity, visuals, audio, capturing that, like that is just what'll make a video go. Not the amount of cool effects you can do. So yeah, hopefully you don't spend too much time. That's for sure.
I love that. It actually reminds me of another question from the chat we've got from Eli asking, what order do you build your edits? I know we got a little bit of a sneak peek of like with the Tatum piece, choosing the sound bites, but how do you select the best sound bites? How do you select the best imagery when you're building it?
I think it has to do with, you have to understand what the goal of the video is first. Like there's not many times I go into an edit and I'm like, oh, man, I have no idea what I'm going to do or what I'm trying to achieve. So specifically with the Tatum piece, it was like, we've been a little rocky. We've won a couple games. We've lost a couple games. We're not this like superhuman team that's, winning every game. So the sound bites, you want to make the players seem not very humble about the way they're going about it. Very like we're sticking to the work, we're sticking to the craft. But then you also want to match that with visuals. So I'm not going to have a clip where he's beating on his chest and super like excited, but I will have one where he's sitting on the bench and he's just thinking to himself. He's very focused. And I think if you can understand that, if you can understand what you're trying to achieve, I think the edit process will go a lot smoother.
I love that. That is such great advice because we've got a few questions about building your edit and how do you think about the best sound bites, but you said it. Have your goal in mind. What is the goal of the edit trying to achieve? Jeremiah, this has been so awesome. Chat, let's give some love to Jeremiah. I also want to hear the favorite feature that he shared. We talked about transcription, text-based editing. We talked about motion graphics templates using Frame.io. Let us know in the chat what your favorite feature is. I want to hear that. Jeremiah, we'll bring you back for Q&A at the end, but we're going to bring on Sam Freed now from the Las Vegas Raiders. Hey there, Sam. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing great.
Awesome. So super excited to get into the content that you have. And you're responsible for many things with the Raiders, but one of them is a series called Talk of the Nation that incorporates sit down, maybe longer form interviews. How do you set yourself up for success to cut quickly with those kinds of projects and long form kind of interviews that you've got going on?
Yeah, so Talk of the Nation is a series we did last year with the Raiders. We put out 1 episode a week, basically sitting down with alumni, current players, fans, just anyone involved in Raider Nation. And so over here, I have the project open right here. And organization for me is key. So over here in my project bin, I have folders for assets, interview, and my sequences, because sometimes this project can get really out of hand. So organization is huge. So in my assets folder, I've got audio, B-roll, breaks and bumps for commercials, logos, lower thirds. And then I got my interview here, which is my video files and my audio. And then my sequences here, I've got my different sequences that I've created. So I bring everything in, get it all sorted out. And with a project like this, the first thing I do is I get my cameras and I create a multicam sequence, because in this project, I'll bring up right here, I've got a camera on Daniel Carlson here, our kicker. Got a camera on our host, Sidley Scholes. We've got a camera on AJ Cole, our punter. And we've got a wide shot here. So multicam is huge and makes it a lot easier to edit and line cut from camera to camera as the interview is going on. So in order to do that, what I do is I select all my cameras along with my audio, and I'll right click, and you'll go down to create multi-camera source sequence. And then it brings up this window here. And you can name it whatever you want, but I'll just name it TOTN multicam sequence. And on set, we did everything in time code. So I'll select time code here and just hit OK. And you'll see right here, it created this multicam sequence, which is different than a normal sequence. As you can see, a normal sequence, the layers are a little bit unlined, where a multicam sequence, everything is lined up because it's synced up. So if I were to double click this, it brings up the different cameras right here, all based on the same time code. So from here, what I can do is, in order to see all the cameras and the audio lined up, if I right click the multicam and select, where's it at? Oh, open in timeline. It'll create a new sequence here, and you can see the video is all lined up along with all the different audio files here. And so typically what I do is I'm going to delete, or first I'm going to unlink everything, but I typically like to clean it up a little bit, because when you bring it into multicam, it's syncing up all the different audio file or audio channels from the different cameras and everything. So I like to clean up all the ones I don't need, which there can be a lot of them. So typically I'll get rid of all the blue ones, just because those are the ones from the camera, because since we recorded into a mixer, that's the only audio I want to use, which is the green ones here. And so you'll see the different channels of audio that the mixer spit out. So in channel 1 and 2 are all the mics mixed into these two channels, and then 3, 4, and 5 are the individual mics of each speaker. So again, I don't like to use the mix audio because I like to have control of my audio from each speaker. So I'll just delete those and bring up these 3. So then we have each speaker right here on their own respective track. So then from here, what you can do is, I like to create another sequence, and I'll call it multicam to edit. And from here, I'll just get rid of this really quick. From here, you can drag in the multicam sequence here. And so it now has the audio files along with the multicam sequence just on one frame. Again, I like to clean up a little bit and just delete the tracks I don't need. So from here, you have the multicam sequence. However, you'll notice it's only stuck on one camera right now. So this is where the fun part comes in. This is where you can start line cutting during the interview and switch cameras. So from this point, you have to turn on the multicam view, which is in this little panel here with all these little buttons. It'll be this one that has the giant screen with the little 4 squares next to it, the toggle multi-camera view. And in case you don't see it, if you hit this little plus button over here, these are all the different buttons you can bring in. And so you can just click and drag it and bring it into your panel there. So once I click this, boom, I've got my 4 cameras here, and then I have the program monitor. That's the view that's going out essentially. So you can see I've got camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, camera 4. And by default, I don't believe these pop up. So in order to have these camera overlays so you know what they are, if you click the wrench here and go all the way down to overlays, you can check that. But if you go to cameras, overlay settings, and then go to settings, this is where you can customize it to how you want, where you can have, time code pop up or a camera name. There's a lot of different things you can set up, but I like to keep it clean and just have the camera names. So I've got camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, camera 4. And so from here, we'll just jump into the interview randomly right here. And the way you cut live is, I have my buttons 1, 2, 3, and 4 set for the respective cameras. So 1 is camera 1, camera 2, 3 is camera 3, and so on and so forth. And as you play the video or the interview, you can hit the keys live and it'll switch to that camera. So I'll do that for a little bit. I'm going to mute my mic so you can hear the interview.
Country with each other and stuff. So like the personal side, but as well, you know, the football side too. Like we've come from young pups to pretty good football players, I think now.
I mean, this guy, when I first met him, he was like, yeah, you know, I think it'll be a couple more years before we have kids. And then like 2 months later, Kat was pregnant.
So boom. So as the video was playing, I was able to hit the keys to switch the camera live, and you'll see it made the cuts for me right here, where it started with Daniel Carlson, switched to the wide shot, switched to AJ, and then switched over to our host Sibley Scholes, and it makes those cuts live for you. Now, let's say you go back and maybe you made the cut too late, maybe you made the cut too early, and you didn't like where the cut was made. You could always go in or onto the timeline here and select this rolling edit tool, which is the N hotkey, and you can adjust this cut to make that shot stay on a little longer or bring it back and have that cut or that next camera come in a little sooner. So that's very handy to keep in mind when going through that edit.
I love that. It's almost like you're live directing, like you're in a control room or something, and you're just kind of as you're going through. So you play the whole interview and you're just pressing 1, 2, 3, 4, and then later going in and using that ripple edit tool to clean it up. Did I get your workflow right for that?
That's exactly it.
That's awesome. Now, you mentioned hotkeys a few times. How do you set up your keyboard for success? Because you can customize your keyboard, but are you leaning on any specific hotkeys? How do you keep yourself organized from a keyboard standpoint?
Yeah, so hotkeys are huge. It just makes editing a lot more efficient. It saves time just to have your hand on the keys and know what you're pressing rather than looking down and figuring out what button does what, or looking around in Premiere and trying to find, you know, a certain window or a certain like the razor tool or whatever it may be. So I like to customize my hotkeys to my liking. So if you go up to Premiere Pro here and hit keyboard shortcuts, it'll bring up this keyboard. And there is the default that Adobe provides, but like I said, I like to move things around a little bit to my liking. And specifically what I do is I try to move the ones I use the most to the left side of the keyboard. That way my left hand can stay just on that side of the keyboard and my right hand can stay on the mouse, and I don't have to constantly look up and look down from the screen of the keyboard trying to find these hotkeys. So the ones that I move over mainly are the shuttle left, shuttle stop, and shuttle right. By default, those are J, K, and L. But like I said, I'm moving to the left side of the screen. So as you can see, shuttle left is still on J. So if you want to move it over to A, which is empty right now, go down here and I'll type in shuttle left. As you can see, shortcut is J. So what I want to do is move that to A. So I'll click the J and click the X, and now it's nothing. And so I'll click the empty space and hit A. And now I'll have shuttle left on A. Once I click OK, it'll be moved over to A. But now I have shuttle left on A. And some other ones that I move over, I do mark in and out as Q and W. So again, Q is at ripple trim right now. So if I want to move the mark in, it is on Q already. So ignore that. But I have mark in and mark out on Q and W. I move the pen tool over to E. And then I come from a Windows background, so I even changed my Command S for save to Control S. But that's just me. And so you can save this as a preset. So once you start customizing it, up here it'll go to custom. And then if you save as, you can type it in as a preset, and then you already have this preset for future Premiere versions when you upgrade or whatever it may be. So yeah, hotkeys are very huge. Once you can learn them and get them down, it'll save you a lot of time in editing.
And I love that. So for you, the left hand, you like kind of keeping things, it seems like centralized in that. Is there any rhyme or reason to it? Are you left-handed, or that's just your natural preference?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not left-handed, but I mean, when all of us started taking those typing classes in, elementary school or whatever, you have your left hand or your index finger on the letter F or the key F, because it has that little mark just to know where you're at in the keyboard. So I kind of use that as my marker and just keeping everything right there, so I'm not constantly moving my hand back and forth on the keyboard.
I love that. And hotkeys are so essential, I feel like, to grow as an editor, because it speeds up your workflow for sure. So I love that you can save your own keyboard and use it for future use. Now, let's talk about timeline organization. And, you've got multiple angles in this piece. How do you stay organized when you're working with your projects?
Yeah, so I'll bring up this sequence here, which is the same interview, but this is the broadcast cut that I made, because with this interview, we make a long form version that goes out on YouTube, and then we make a broadcast cut that's cut down to 30 minutes for TV. And so this is the broadcast cut here. And the way I stay organized is I'll keep certain assets on their respective layers. So for example, layer 1 is my interview. I've got layer 2 as B-roll. Actually, you know what? Here, I'm going to make this the sequence bigger by hitting I think it's the tilde key, I believe is what it's called. The little button, the little squiggly line above the escape key. If you select your window and hit that, it'll make it full screen. That way you can see it a lot easier. So like I said, got B-roll on layer 2. I've got graphics and logos on layer 3. Up here, I've got lower thirds on my layer 6. And then down here in audio, I do the same thing. I keep our host on layer 1. I've got AJ Cole layer 2, Carlson layer 3, and then some music on the 4th track here. And also, you'll notice a whole bunch of different colors. So I like to color label my assets as well, so I can visually see what they are. And the way you do that, let's take Sibley, her audio, for example. I have changed it to a pink color. So if you select the clip or the layer and you right click, you can go down to label right here, and it gives you a variety of colors that you can put any color you want. I can even make it purple if I wanted, but to keep it consistent, I'll have it as the lavender. And so I like to do that just to keep things organized. I even have my commercials over here in a light blue color. And also another good tool to use these colors, you'll notice in my interview layer here, I have a couple that are this mango, this like orange color. The reason I did that is because during that part in the interview, I thought it was a really good bite. And we like to promote our Talk of the Nation series on our social channels. And so I thought that was a really good, maybe 20-second bite that we can use to promote on Instagram or Twitter, or X, or Facebook. And so I do that as a reminder. Once I'm finished going through the interview, I can go back and be like, oh, that was a really good take right there, a really good sound. Let's promote that on our social media platforms.
That's so cool, especially like you said, on a long form piece like this. And you're like, I just need to go straight to that moment without having to play back anything. I can see on your timeline, okay, there's the orange clip, bring my cursor there, and there you go. This is so cool, Sam. In the chat, Eli said, I did not know you could rename layers. And other folks, like Megan, saying, I made keyboard shortcuts for all the label colors, super helpful too. So yes, you can make a lot of keyboard shortcuts for just about anything, depending on your workflow. So that is so cool. Now, we heard a little bit, you played back some audio earlier of this piece in particular, but audio is such an important part of video content creation. What tips or what features are you using to help with audio cleanup on your end?
Yeah, so audio is very important when it comes to video production. A lot of people, like just getting started in editing, think it's just putting, clips together and whatever, but audio can either make or break a video. If you have really bad audio, I don't even want to watch the video. Just get me away from it because I'm too distracted. So audio is extremely important. So right here on my timeline, I have I've got two pieces of audio. This is from an interview that I was not on set on. Like I said, this is from a freelance group that we hired, and I was not very satisfied with the audio that came in. So right here, you'll notice right away that the waveforms here are just super low. So I will play this for you so you can hear what it sounds like.
The same, obviously here. NFL MVP, Offensive Player of the Year 1985.
We're perking up our ears. I can see based on the waveform and hear that that's pretty low audio.
Yeah, so I couldn't believe it came in like that, because you can see on the sound levels here, it was at like -42 or -45, so it was super low. So what you can do is, so that was our host talking. So if I click it, and over here in the essential sound panel, I can tag it as dialogue, and it'll instantly bring up these different effects here and parameters that you can edit: loudness, repair, clarity, and creative, to really tweak it how you want. So one of the things I do is with the loudness here is, if you hit auto match, it'll instantly bring up the levels a little bit to a more acceptable volume, if you will. So I can show you that really quick. Oops.
MVP, the same, obviously here. NFL MVP, Offensive Player of the Year 1985.
So right away, it brought it up to the -15, -12 area, which is ideal for video production, just by a click of a button with the auto match under loudness. So then from there, to me, it still sounded like it was a little bit airy, like a little bit of white noise in the background, kind of like maybe they were in a conference room of some sort. So from here, if you click, have it selected, you can click this Enhance button under the Enhance Speech selection here. And basically, it'll just clean it up for you and make it sound like it was a more professional recording. So if I click it, boom, it did it right away. The mix amount is only 0.7, and you can adjust this to your liking. Let's just have it let's try 3. So right away, that looked like it was a little too much. As you can see, the waveforms are now all flat, which means it's probably peaking. Let's just do 2 and see what it sounds like. Oops, wrong one.
Super Bowl MVP, the same, obviously here. NFL MVP, Offensive Player of the Year.
So right away, definitely it sounds way clearer. It was a little bit hot, as you can see. My levels were peaking, so I would definitely adjust that a little bit to bring it back down to -12. But just with the click of 2 buttons, it cleaned up the audio from something totally unacceptable to something that I'm fairly happy with.
That is amazing on so many levels. The auto match loudness feature is next level, because like I said, I was straining to hear that audio, and then cleaning that up with enhanced speech. I did hear it did sound very echoey at first, but enhanced speech kind of cleaned that up. That is so cool. I want to know in the chat, for those watching, which feature you like more. Is it enhanced speech, or is it auto match, or have you used any of them? Let us know in the chat. This is so cool, Sam. Now, I know that there's so much content that the Raiders do, not just Talk of the Nation. But how are you working with any new features, anything that's exciting to you and your team at all that you're playing around with?
Yeah, in Premiere Beta, they have added some really, really cool features. Let me see where that's at. Here we go. So we'll start with the Gen Extend tool, which to me just absolutely blows my mind. How it's using AI to extend a shot that maybe you cut too early, or you need a couple extra seconds. And to me, it just blows me away. So here's a drone shot that I got of just a light at a park, just doing a little orbit during this nice sunset here in Vegas. But if I get to the end here, that's the end of the shot, and I was like, oh shoot, I wish it was going for maybe 2 more seconds. So what you can do is, so I have this same shot here. One thing to know about this Gen Extend, that it's still in development, it can't do 4K footage. So at the moment, it can only do 1080 footage. So the shot I originally had here was 4K, and then I threw it, I put it in Media Encoder and made a 1080 version. So here's my shot. And actually, I'll just bring it in really quick. Oops. So here's the same shot, just 1080, still ending right there. But if I want to go a little bit longer, if I grab, this is the new button down here, the Generative Extend tool, and click that, and go to the end of my clip here, I can drag it out for 2 more seconds. So as that's going on, it may take a minute depending on the shot you have. So I already have it done right over here. And you can see right here, it says AI generated. And it also does audio as well. Right now, it can do video for 2 seconds and it can do audio for 10 seconds. For audio, it'd be good for like ambient sound or maybe room tone, anything like that. It can't do music or, you know, dialogue, nothing like that. So right here, I'll just play it out.
Wow,
And you can,
that is
yeah,
amazing.
like, to me, that just blows me away. Like, it looks like the shot just continues without any hiccups or anything like that. Like, the cars are still moving, the light is the same. Like, it's wild.
That is absolutely incredible. And I think, you know, I did a lot of long form content, and there were times where I would, you know, maybe slow down the clip, or, you know, then it looks a little jittery depending on the footage. Gen Extend, that is such a cool example, Sam. I'm really excited for the future of that. And yes, as Sam mentioned, right now there are some limitations, but in terms of the footage and the types of footage that you can actually use to Gen Extend, but the team is actively working on a lot of those other requests. Any other features that you're playing around with in Premiere Pro Beta?
Yeah, so I like to use the media intelligence analysis that is also in beta. And what that is, like if you have a project with so many clips and, you know, you lose track or you get a little unorganized and you're trying to find a specific shot in your project, you can, the media intelligence analysis basically uses AI to look for the shot you're looking for just by typing it in, and it'll find that shot for you, which saves tons of time. So let's see here. Is it going?
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
Okay, yeah, I think it's, let me just close this project really quick.
Sure. And while he's doing that, again, the Gen Extend feature that Sam just showed, and this media intelligence and the new search panel is in Premiere Pro Beta. And if any of you are testing it out for the first time, you'll see in the upper right corner of his screen, there's a little magnifying glass. That's how you can pull up the search panel to start looking for clips. But Sam, I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah, so when I opened Premiere Beta, I think I already had the search panel set up in my window. But like Karina said, you can bring it up just by hitting that little magnifying glass, which is right over here. So here's the project that you guys saw in the beginning of this webinar with the little highlight video I made. And so let's just say I'm trying to find a cheerleader, because I know I have a Raiderette somewhere in this project, but I don't want to just scrub through and try to find that shot. So if I go up into the search panel here and just type in cheerleader, it should bring up, and there we go, boom. It just found the shots that I got of different cheerleaders from different games. And it took what, half a second?
That's next level, especially because like I'm seeing your timeline. You've got a bunch of clips there. That is, that's amazing to be able to say, okay, I want to click on that. That's amazing.
Yeah, and I have another one. I know I have a shot of Colton Miller. He's the offensive tackle for the Raiders. I know I have a shot of him walking out of the tunnel, but again, I don't know if I used it in the sequence. I don't know if it's in a folder somewhere. So let's just try putting in man walking. Didn't work that time. Let's just try walking.
There you go. We see a bunch more clips there.
There's more clips. Has some people walking. Has a little kid here walking. Here's some players running out of the tunnel.
And if you double click the clip, it'll take you to that specific point, right? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it brings it up into the source monitor over here.
Oh, I think you might have had a typo with man walking. Let's try it. Maybe, let's see.
There we go. So I selected sequence. So before I had source selected, so it was going through all of my files in here, which I did not want. If you select sequence, it'll only go with their shots using the sequence. So I typed in man walking, boom, here's the whole team actually walking out of the tunnel. Where'd it go? It should bring it up. There it is. So boom, there's the guys walking out down the tunnel. Just by typing in man walking, it brought up all the clips of guys walking. So again, super handy, very helpful, very time saving, and it makes your editing a whole lot more efficient.
This is so cool. Sam, can you maximize the search panel? I just would love to see this because, you know, we typed in just one word, but you can also type in phrases, right? Man walking across the field. You can even search for different, I don't know, it recognizes different phrases. Oh, flag. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so I found the flag here. Yeah, there's the flag shot. Let me bring that back up. What else can we try? Try ball in air, maybe.
Yeah, there you go.
Boom,
Wow.
Yeah, you can see where like the quarterback right here is about to throw the ball. You can see in these frames here, I'm sure the ball is in the air at this point. As you can see, no players are in it. So yeah, it's pretty intelligent.
This is amazing. And I see we got a question in the chat. This is all local on your device. And the way media intelligence works is it's analyzing all the footage within the project and it's doing it really, really quickly. This is, oh my gosh, gonna save so much time. I wish I had this feature many years ago.
Oh,
but
yeah.
This is so cool. Again, a reminder, the search panel and this feature media intelligence works on the footage that you import into Premiere Pro. So what Sam was showing, all of those clips, he's got those files as his source media. And like he showed, you can search just through the source, or you can search in a specific sequence or by sequence rather. So this is all super cool. I'm thrilled about all of these things. Let us know in the chat which feature that Sam showed you liked. He talked about multicam, hotkeys, timeline organization, auto match loudness, enhanced speech, gen extend, search panel, media intelligence. Let us know what your favorite feature is. We're going to bring back Jeremiah and Nate on to do some quick Q&A. But we also have a little survey that we're going to launch. So keep an eye on that. We will launch that survey in just a second. Let us know what you will be using on your future project. And while that's going, we're going to dive right into Q&A. We've had so many amazing questions. Some of them have been sort of answered. And Sam, I'll throw this one to you, but Bob asked earlier, audio levels between 0 dB, not negative 12 dB. What's your standard practice for working at audio from a leveling standpoint?
Yeah, so from what I learned, like the standard for internet or for web is -12. We kind of keep it between -12. You want nothing peaking at over -6. That's where you want like your highest peaks to hit -6, but nothing more. But even when it comes to broadcast, the broadcast standard we use is -18. So it's a little bit different if things are going down on TV. But those are kind of the magic numbers you want to remember: -6, -12, and -18.
All great advice. And again, it's very dependent on where your content is ending up. And hopefully, like Jeremiah mentioned, you know when you're starting an edit what the goal of that and where what platform it's going to end up on. Jeremiah, this question is for you from Lexi. What entry-level positions do you recommend applying for as a post-grad in order to get into this specific type of production?
Man, I mean, it's really tough. Like Sam, I have a similar story, but I applied through my job on LinkedIn. So like there was maybe 2,000 plus people that also applied for a similar position. And I know content just in general has become very saturated with a lot of creatives and people that want to do what we do. But I think the biggest part is that having a portfolio that stands out is one. I think that'll get you really, really far. But I also think that staying in tune and connecting with the people that you want to work for. So whether that's sending that random message to the senior advisor or senior director at a certain place, or even the manager or lower level people like me, like just trying to stay in contact with different realms, and don't limit yourself. Don't limit yourself to one sport or one level. It doesn't have to be professional. It could be, you know, Division 1, Division 2. Like it really, if you love this craft, I think you'll get out of it what you put in. So just remember those things. Yeah.
All great advice. And networking is so important, and networking happens not just in person, but in digital spaces too. So I love that you mentioned how you got your job. Nate, question from Ethan saying, I struggle to do quick turnarounds for game recaps. What is your advice to create a good product, but in a timely manner? We've all kind of talked about it in a different way, but what's your take on that, Nate?
So one thing that I find like I spend a lot of time is finding the right music track. So one thing that I like to do, like we've done this for spring training, we've already found 20, 25 music tracks that we know we like from our provider, and we'll put them in our project. So we already have like narrowed down. So we're not starting from scratch every time I look for music. I also, like you saw in Frame.io with the marking of clips, I mark selects as I'm shooting too. So that's another way as you're kind of scrubbing through your raw files. If you know that you see that black kind of thumbnail frame that you liked the shot before it, you can start there. I think that's a really helpful tool. And then, you know, on top of the project organization that I showed, pre-making sequences as far as you can, whether it's a lower third or whether it's a logo bug or maybe an end slate or something else that you have to include, do that before you shoot, because then it's all there waiting for you when you do have your footage. I also struggle with overshooting. So I think another thing to tell yourself is like, if this is a 20-second edit, I only need 17 clips that are useful. I don't need to shoot 200 shots of Star Wars Day if I'm only doing a 30-second recap of it. So that's another thing to keep in mind too.
Listen, we love Star Wars over here, but I know that we're all dealing with managing that media and going through it. And yes, we've got things like the search panel to help us, but we want to work smart, not hard. So I love that advice. Now, this is a question for all of you. Cole asked for each of you, what are the most important skills to develop for applying and transitioning for full-time positions out of college? Sam, we'll start with you.
Well, for me, it might be a little tough to answer since I didn't go to college.
Okay. Well,
but,
when you transition to your first big time job.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like my goal, I just wanted to get into the NFL. Like I was raised in a family that just always had football on Sundays and just love football. So I really wanted to get somewhere in the NFL with some team doing camera and editing. Didn't care what team. So for me, the closest team were the Oakland Raiders at the time. And you just got to know your skill set and know your worth. Like I knew I was ready. I know I could take it on. I knew football very well, and I know my skills and my talents. So I just took the shot and just sent, like I said, a message on LinkedIn, took a chance, and I didn't know I'd get hired 5 minutes later.
That shout out to LinkedIn for a second. We mentioned it twice. Jeremiah, what about you? Like when you could go back in time and before you got I like to call it my first big girl job, what advice do you have to help you get into that position?
Yeah, I don't think I definitely wouldn't give myself any more advice. The advice that I was given in college was the same to this day, and that was, you might invest in yourself a ton, but also invest in the people that are around you. And I think connections are imperative. Understanding just different departments, being nice to other people, understanding what another person's job, so you can take different critiques from different people. Being, I guess the word is coachable. But also, I think being coachable brings flexibility. And as a creative, sometimes I think you can get very stuck in your ways. And I think that obviously doesn't lead to a good team player. So I think the biggest thing in college was like, I was always leaping at opportunities to do things, even if I wasn't comfortable. even if it was something I wasn't sure if I could make this edit, or I wasn't sure if I could film it this certain way. But just trying to, you know, remain humble and just take every day and take every project like it's, you know, really important.
Yeah, and I think having that appetite for learning at every stage of your career is super important. I think we've touched on that a few times already. But Nate, what about you? What are the most important skills to really lean on as people are getting prepared to look for that first, you know, full-time gig?
Yeah, so I actually hire our seasonal folks. So we have like an intern role, we have a game day role that we bring in for the season. And the thing that stands out to me when I'm looking through applicants for those roles is people have taken the time to display the content they want to just like be proud of in a way that goes beyond just like a link to their Instagram. I think taking some time, I think Adobe has some tools for portfolio, and there's some other really easy places, even a YouTube channel where I can sort of click through and see your work in a way that is represented well and easy to find. That's huge. And I also think I don't necessarily expect people to have shot already what I'm going to ask them to shoot. It's not so much that you have to have a reel that's entirely full of baseball highlights. But what I am looking for is your composition, your knowledge of whatever you are shooting, knowing that you're in the right place for the shot, knowing that you know how to use your camera. I'm not too worried if you. I hadn't shot a single sporting event when I got my job for the Nationals, but my reel was full of things that showed my ability to tell a story, you know, to, you know, capture good content. So I'm much more, it's much more valuable to display your best than display what you think they're trying to see or what you're going to be doing in that job. And that's what stands out to me is people who have displayed their work, their best work in a really clean and findable way.
If I can piggyback off that, Karina, really quick,
Yeah.
what you said, like when I got hired at the Raiders, I've never shot any football content, no NFL footage or anything like that. What I showed the manager hiring me, I showed him my wedding films. And same thing, he knew I could compose shots well. I knew audio, I knew lighting, and he saw the potential in me.
Listen, this is all incredible advice, and I think I am so inspired because it emphasizes that every single one of us can start from learning as we go and learning, but it is important to take the time to put skills into practice. And I know my colleague Jonathan dropped it in the chat, but for those who are wanting to get a little bit better at some video editing, there is a website, adobevideotraining.com. Check that out. There's lots of resources on YouTube University. I saw someone in the chat mention that earlier. Nate, Jeremiah, Sam, this session is unbelievable. I just want to go through the chat and list Multicam was a favorite, auto reframe was a favorite, seeing the share presentations, text-based editing, searching for content, as all of the chat was going live. This has been so amazing. Thank you all for tuning in and joining with us today. We hope that you're inspired and you keep creating your content. Thank you again to Nate, Jeremiah, and Sam for sharing your incredible video production processes with us.